Hello, and welcome to my presentation about carbon dioxide removal and the carbon cycle and the effect of carbon dioxide on the environment and how some new solutions have been developed to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and therefore help lessen the impact on the environment. So this presentation is broken down into 5 parts: introduction, background information, the current state of carbon dioxide removal, CDR is abbreviated multiple times throughout this presentation, and the future of carbon dioxide removal. Increasing amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases are being released into the atmosphere from a variety of sources such as factories, cars, fossil fuels, coal, and such. And these gases, such as carbon dioxide and methane, accumulate within the atmosphere and are collectively known as the greenhouse gases because they trap heat. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA, the average amount of global carbon dioxide is approximately 422.7 parts per million uh, in 2024, and the rate at which carbon dioxide is accumulating in the atmosphere year over year has also increased at a much more rapid rate, especially within the past 100 or so years, being about 100 times faster than any of the previous increases within the past 60 years or so. So within the past 60 years, it's gone to a level that's 100 times anything that we've previously seen. And we know the historical data because we're able to take ice and essentially, extract the data about how much carbon was in the atmosphere at the time. And then continues, as the amount continues to increase, the carbon cycle is further disrupted as the natural processes that work to eliminate carbon dioxide, photosynthesis, and all those type of processes are unable to cope as well as with the regulation of the amount of carbon in the atmosphere because it's accumulating at a rate that's unnatural. It's not a natural process, it's humans adding more than is normal, essentially. And then in an attempt to reduce the effects of carbon dioxide as as a whole on both planet, on humans, um the atmosphere and our environment as a whole, um we're looking at ways to artificially reduce the amount of carbon dioxide um in the atmosphere. So you can see on this graph over here that is taken from NOAA. There you can see on that vertical axis here, this is the accumulation in parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So you can see, and data on this begins in 1960, and you can see a quite significant upward trend, not like a slight curve, but a significant upward trend that appears to be accelerating. And then also from NOAA, here is carbon dioxide emissions graph that uses historical data. In this, the blue line is your atmospheric carbon dioxide, and then the black line is carbon dioxide emissions. So you can see when uh, you can actually kind of pinpoint the start here around 1860-ish is, and the 1800s, you can see where the Industrial Revolution picks up, and you can see that there's a significant increase in the amount of carbon dioxide being emitted. And then you can also see around the 1950s, um, with the post-World War II boom in a lot of countries, that there was a significant increase. And then the democratization of transportation, everybody has cars, etc. and you'd see this historical data here, and you could see that line is following what was on the previous slide. And then you can actually see using ice data here, ppm is parts per million. Um, so using historical ice data, we can see how much carbon was in the atmosphere at specific times. So here we could see that about 375,000 years ago, the highest previous recorded data, highest previous recorded amount of carbon dioxide that we could calculate from ice was 300 parts per million. But in 2024, the average amount was 422.8. So over 100, 122 parts per million more than in 19, or not 1940, 375,000 years ago. So this leaves us at the current status. So we know that there's an issue. Um, so there's two ways we can go about removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So one way is the conventional way, the way that, is the most natural, is thinking, you know, if we plant a bunch of plants, there's ways that we can um, absorb more of that carbon dioxide, and essentially, the more plants we plant, the more capability that it will have to regulate itself somewhat. However, the problem with that is the more eventually, there's it's really hard to keep up. And the system already, as you've seen by the previous slides, is essentially unable to keep up. So you can see there's other removal methods such as direct air carbon capture, biomass sinking, mineral products, ocean alkalinity enhancement, and bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. Um, so bioenergy with carbon capture and storage captures energy from carbon produced from biomass. There's also a thing called biochar that converts organic waste to carbon. And right now, the best way that we have to countering this is the natural carbon dioxide removal systems, because the novel ones, the new ones, aren't quite as developed yet. So the natural one approximately takes about 332 million tons of CO2 from the atmosphere each year. Um, there is, some leeway to that number. Obviously, it's kind of hard to estimate, how many trees and stuff like that, but that's the approximate number. Um, and then also natural changes can also somewhat affect, you know, because we're measuring the difference. So natural fluctuations can affect how much we think is being taken out. And then the novel solutions in the past couple of years have been having an increasing impact, but still relatively small compared to the original or the conventional method. So they currently contribute about 130 or 1.35 million tons of CO2 removed from the atmosphere per year, with BECS and biochar being the largest capture methods. And then you can see here's a graph from a report that breaks down each year what each one of the systems used for the novel systems was able to remove. Many international bodies have agreed that the increasing rise in global temperature and also the carbon dioxide accumulation that we're seeing in the atmosphere cannot continue this way, and there's really the the um, the conventional ways of carbon capture aren't able to cut it for a lot of it. just because it's over the limit already, essentially, of what that could handle reasonably, and we can't, plant things fast enough, and it become kind of extreme. So we need to look into those new uh, novel solutions. So there is some pros and cons to both of those, um, to looking at the novel solutions. So there is some concern that the addition of new materials to soils, um, through materials like the biochar and all that type of capture stuff, could, um, cause issues with, having new different materials in the soil, and especially if there's a lot of it. And then carbon dioxide removal operations often kind of could clash possibly with agricultural usage since they both require land. But there is also benefit that, it's possible that the infusion of carbon into the soil can actually increase the amount of water that would be available to plants and make the soil a lot more fertile. And then also BECS can also generate energy while it's capturing carbon. So those are some of the pros and cons and stuff we can look forward to in the future. And we're seeing a lot more of, as we saw in some of the previous slides, increase in the amount of carbon that is being removed by these novel solutions. And then here are my references. Thank you for watching.